Today I want to take a closer look at the semiconductor manufacturing market. There have been some recent news. For example, TSMC just released their July numbers, and let me just say they've seen huge growth compared to a year ago. We also have GlobalFoundries that recently reported earnings, and they are sharing a bit of insight in the market, and they are seeing a bit of a slowdown, and I'll explain more in today's episode. So with everything going around in the semiconductor market, are you bearish or bullish at the moment? Let me know in the comments below.
I do want to thank The Motley Fool for sponsoring this video, and make sure to check out fool.com/Jose to get the top 10 stocks to buy right now.
Before we take a closer look at TSMC, I want to take a closer look at this article by the Semiconductor Industry Association. They did mention that the global semiconductor sales increased 13.3% in Q2 of 2022 versus a year ago. This was posted on August 1st of 2022. So about a week ago. If we take a closer look at this revenue chart, we can see this nice uptick right now, and obviously this huge growth that has happened in just the past 2 years. A lot of investors are worried that after a huge incline, we are going to see a huge drop like we've seen before. They also mentioned that worldwide sales for June decreased 1.9% month to month. So it did seem like June was the slowdown of the kind of semiconductor market, at least on a month to month basis. Now I want to take a closer look at Taiwan Semiconductor, ticker TSMC. And this is a company that reports monthly reports, and they did give us similar reports about a month ago when they reported their June 2022 numbers. If you are enjoying the video, make sure to hit the thumbs up as it helps me grow my overall audience. And if you want to support a little bit more, make sure to subscribe using my link at fool.com/Jose. We can see in May, TSMC reported that they made about 185 billion new Taiwan dollars in revenue, and that was up a nice amount compared to April. But if we take a closer look at their June numbers, it was 175 billion, so it was down month to month, very similar to what the Semiconductor Industry Association reported with information from WSTS. But now fast forward into July of 2022, TSM reported a 49.9% growth year over year and a 6.2% month to month. So I wonder when WSTS reports their July 2022 numbers, if it's going to be very similar to what Taiwan reported, which would be a month to month growth. I do want to say TSMC obviously has some advantage, as we saw from Nvidia, for example. One of the main reasons that Nvidia's margins are taking a hit is because they do have previous long-term purchase commitments that they need to make. Most of those contracts, if not all of them, are going to TSMC from Nvidia. So we can see TSMC, even if this market slows down, because of all these long-term agreements that they have, it can overall kind of smooth out that revenue for this company. So this might be tricky, right? Because TSMC mentioned that they saw a nice growth in July of 2022. Unfortunately, as investors, we don't know if this growth is because there might be another bit of pickup demand happening in July, or if it's just a long-term agreements helping buff out this growth for TSMC. At the same time, we do have companies like Micron telling us that, hey, the upcoming quarters are not looking as well for us, but obviously the memory market is a little bit different compared to just the overall semiconductor market. So we can't really compare apples to apples there. At the same time, we also have Nvidia giving us preliminary results, but those preliminary results were also including the June month, and we saw the June month was a bit of a slowdown. I don't believe Nvidia gave us an outlook for the upcoming quarter. So I do want to say, as an investor, that's what we want to take a closer look at, the outlook that they might give us. I do, now that I think about it, and just thinking about it as I am recording this episode, it is pretty interesting that Nvidia didn't give us an outlook. And I would say if they were seeing things were looking really bad in July and August, I think they would have warned investors. But if they didn't see too much of a decline in July or August or early August, then the company might just be a little bit confused to where the market is going, so they didn't want to give us an outlook. And I do want to say that might be what might be happening at the moment. Regardless, next I want to take a closer look at GlobalFoundries. This is another huge semiconductor manufacturing. They just reported earnings as well. We can see wafer shipments increased 6% versus a year ago. Many might say, hey, only 6% growth, but this is a company working at full capacity right now. They also mentioned revenue was up 23%. One of the main reasons is obviously average selling price have increased because they have such a huge demand at the moment. They're able to do a little bit more pricing on their end. They also showed adjusted EBITDA margins were up 68% compared to the same time last year. So the company is seeing some great growth. I do want to say the company during their earnings call mentioned a few things. The first thing that they mentioned is that about at the beginning of the year, their overall demand was over 25% of their total supply. So they had a huge kind of leeway. Now coming in here in the middle of the year, that has kind of decreased to only 10% above supply. So I do want to say that still shows that there is a healthy demand for semiconductors at the moment, but they are seeing a bit of a slowdown. I do want to say for a company like GlobalFoundries, it might also affect their overall margins because now they won't have as much pricing power as they did before. For those not familiar with GlobalFoundries, I did do a video on them a few weeks ago, so make sure to check it out. But here they kind of give us a revenue mix by end market. Even though they have a big portion in smart mobile devices, they do mention that this is mainly on high tier products, especially in the 5G market, which is not being affected as much as the overall consumer decline that the other markets in the mobile space are seeing. They also mentioned huge growth in communications, infrastructures, and data centers, and huge growth in home and industrial IoT. They do mention that the automotive market can continue to see big growth, but right now with overall supply chain constraints, it is kind of limiting that growth at the moment. Personal computing did take a huge decline, obviously because of consumer market right now and a lot of OEMs kind of doing inventory control at the moment. But they do mention that even though the consumer market is seeing a decline and they might not be producing as many chips for those kind of products, they are using those manufacturing lines on the markets that still are seeing growth. Data centers, communication infrastructures, home and industrial IoTs are some of the ones they named. The company also mentioned that they have numerous long-term agreements with numerous customers, and that allows them to have very high visibility on upcoming revenue. They did give guidance for Q3, and they are seeing a nice growth again quarter over quarter and year over year. But again, they do mention a bit of a slowdown in the market, and this is something as semiconductor investors we have to keep a track on. So I hope you guys enjoyed today's episode. Take care, have a good day, and see you next time.